Hey everybody, this is Elisa coming to you from NatureBox Pet Emporium. Today we're going to talk about how to set up axolotl eggs. Alright, we've been getting a lot of questions on how to set up and care for axolotl eggs. This is the time of year when many female axolotl become plump with eggs or even lay eggs in your aquarium. This time of year we tend to have an abundance of axolotl eggs, and we often offer them for sale in our store. So we get a lot of questions. How do I set them up? How do I raise them? It can seem a little intimidating, but the process is actually quite simple. Let me show you. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Comment below if you have any questions on any of the content you see in this video. Let's begin. Alright, gathered here we have all the supplies we need to set up our axolotl eggs. We have our standard 10-gallon aquarium. Any container that holds water can work. We like to use a 10-gallon aquarium because they're easy to get a hold of and we can see the development of our eggs through the clear sides. And it holds enough water to account for all the waste our baby axolotl are going to make as they grow. Seachem Prime, our water conditioner. This makes sure that our water is going to be safe for any of our aquatic life. Your water conditioner typically will have directions on the bottle on how much you need to use. Drop per gallon will usually do it. We do a little bit more because the water source we use tends to be high in chlorine. For filtration, we have our air pump, airline tubing, and sponge filter. So you'll notice the sponge filter is rated up to 25 gallons, even though we're only using a 10-gallon tank. We like to size our filter towards the waste our animals are making, not just the water volume in our tank. Thus, the 25-gallon sponge filter is what we use when we're raising a set of eggs in our 10-gallon tank. And finally, we have this little San Francisco Bay shrimpery kit. This actually makes raising baby brine shrimp relatively simple to do. This comes with 3 pre-portioned packets of salt and eggs that you add to the container. That should be enough to get a small batch of eggs raised up to the point where they can move on to bigger food. We start all of our baby axolotl after roughly 24 hours after they hatch. We start introducing baby brine shrimp for them because when they hatch, they're so tiny they can't take many food offerings, and they're not really motivated to go after prepared food like a powder diet yet. So the baby brine shrimp, that movement excites them and gets them to eat, and within just several days typically they're big enough to move on to bigger and heartier foods. But this is a fantastic starter food for our newly hatched axolotl. Now we're going to set up our tank, and first we're going to add some water. When we fill our 10-gallon tank for our axolotl eggs, we like to fill it with just 3 to 4 inches of water to start. That's just enough water to cover the top of our sponge filter. The axolotl are salamanders. They like cooler temperatures than many of the tropical fish we keep. This holds true for their eggs and babies as well. So when we fill the tank, we want to make sure it is filled with cool water. We aim somewhere around 70 degrees, but dipping into the 60s is okay too. Alright, it looks like we have enough water in our tank. Now let's add our water conditioner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We plugged in our air pump and we attached our air hose. Now we're going to hook up our sponge filter. A lot of times your sponge filter will come with an attachment which increases the current in your aquarium. For today, we're going to use our sponge filter without the attachment. Our sponge filter functions by using the air from the air pump to pull water through the sponge, through a mesh, and up through the top. So it'll circulate the water through your whole aquarium. As the air rises, it pulls the water through the side. It rises, pulls the water through the side. You may have to squeeze your sponge a few times just to get all those air bubbles out. And there you are. You see those air bubbles rising. That means it's starting to pull the water in the aquarium through the sides of the sponge. And the sponge is going to provide surface area for all of your beneficial bacteria to grow. Being a new tank, we're not going to have a lot of beneficial bacteria, but in the process of raising eggs and hatching babies, you're going to be doing sometimes daily or twice daily water changes in order to maintain water quality anyway. The sponge filter just acts as insurance to help keep the water quality better in between your water changes. When you receive your axolotl eggs, what you want to look for in each egg is a sign of development of the embryo. And you can see here, instead of the round shape they were when they were laid, now we can see little bean shapes, which shows that our axolotl are developing. A lot of times the eggs might be stuck to a piece of live plant, or some breeders use plastic. Either way, we can just put this whole package directly into our aquarium. The eggs can stay in the bag for quite some time, so you don't have to stress as long as the temperature is good. Let me stress, as long as the temperature is good in your household, so comfortable room temperature, the eggs can be fine in the bag until your aquarium is set up and ready for them. So now that our aquarium has been filled with water and sitting for several hours, it's come to room temperature. Our bag of eggs has also been sitting at room temperature. So since they're the same temperature, we're just going to pour the eggs directly into the aquarium. And we're going to gently lower. The material with your eggs a lot of times is going to float near your sponge filter, which is fine. The little bit of water movement helps keep the eggs healthy and free of fungus. With how developed these eggs are, I would expect to see babies hatching within the next several days. So here we have a tank of baby axolotl. These guys were actually laid January 3rd. They hatched roughly a week later. That makes these little guys about 2 weeks old. So they are now off of the baby brine shrimp. We've been feeding them twice daily and water changing daily for the last 2 weeks. They are now big enough that they are eating chopped blackworms. And we're going to do our daily water change on these guys. So we use the air hose to do our water changes. The airline tubing takes the water out slowly enough that it doesn't disturb the babies. You can see I can move the airline tubing around, and they're not really too fussed by it. It's not big enough to cause enough of a current because they can be fairly fragile when they're little. Too much of a current can kind of buffet them around, and if they hit the bottom or sides too hard, that could injure or kill them. So we're just going to take out all of our detritus from yesterday's meal before we feed them today's breakfast. So here we have our bucket of room temperature water with our Seachem Prime water conditioner in it. We're ready to add water to our axolotl tank. We're going to elevate the bucket so it's higher than the level of the tank, because now we're going to do a siphon. So instead of siphoning water out of the tank, we're going to siphon water into the tank. And there we go. You can see this flow of water is so slow that it's not going to disturb the axolotl babies. So we leave the hose in there and we let it do its thing until the bucket is empty. So by the time your axolotl are 4 to 8 weeks old, they'll be 2 to 3 inches long, and they'll be large enough to where you can start introducing prepared and frozen foods. We use Hikari tubifex worm as our first prepared food that we introduce our axolotl. The acceptance rate is extremely high. And what we do as soon as the axolotl are large enough is we continue to feed our live blackworm, but then we also offer some of the frozen tubifex at the same time. We drop our tubifex into the tank frozen. It starts to break apart fairly rapidly, and now that the babies are used to eating the frozen tubifex, they start to smell it, and they're going to start to swim rapidly around the fish tank because they know it's breakfast. So fast forward about 8 months and you'll have an axolotl 6-7 inches, maybe bigger. And in several years you'll have axolotl like these girls. Some of these girls are approaching 1 foot long. The axolotl come in a variety of colors. You can see here we have a golden albino, we have a bluegill leucistic, we have our Mac male, which is a combination morph of melanoid, axanthic, and copper. So copper gives him that lovely tan color. Given time and proper care, patience, and lots of food and water changes, and your baby axolotl will grow and grow. Petered out there. Thanks for watching, everybody, and please don't forget to like this video, share with your friends.